A month to the day since the war began, and this is the reality of the bread queue. Most of these people have been standing in line through the night. This is the second largest bakery in the city, but the bread is running out.
This bread in this building, about 3 or 4 days, is finished. Run, people wait.
So they're very hungry?
Very hungry.
We came here expecting to tell a story about food shortages and how ordinary people are struggling with limited supplies and soaring prices. But inside, as we began interviewing the technical manager, another story emerged in front of us. Workers in the background were furious that senior Ba'ath Party members who were once in charge here had returned to take control. This man, like most of the others, was frightened to say anything until we arrived. Then he stormed out, saying the Baathists had been treating them like slaves. Outside, word spread, and guards lost control of the gates. The crowd suddenly burst through and ran towards the bakery entrance. Men who'd been guarding the manager's office appeared with Kalashnikov guns, and it seemed that a confrontation was inevitable. When we arrived here, this bakery was under the control of a manager the people say was a supporter of Saddam Hussein and the Ba'athist Party. But after our arrival, he's since disappeared. And the situation now is in chaos. The reformed Iraqi police arrived on the scene, using old-style, heavy-handed techniques to restore order. This is how they organize a bread queue here, at the point of a gun. It would appear that even with Saddam Hussein gone, some things haven't changed. With one of the bakery workers, we asked the senior police officer what he was going to do about the guns and the Ba'athist manager. There are no guns here, he said, and now is not the time to arrest Ba'athists. At his base nearby, I asked a senior American officer what he would do.
We don't want people, same day, different day, same stuff going on here. We want to, there's been a regime change, and we want to make sure that these people can't impose their will on the people.
A convoy of food trucks carrying flour arrived in the city today with the hope that better times might be ahead, but there's still a long road to travel before the peace here is won. Tim Rogers, ITV News, Baghdad.
A special welcome from President Bush for the former POWs returning from Iraq. After an Easter church service at Fort Hood in Texas and a private meeting with the soldiers, Mr. Bush lightened the mood in front of the cameras.
Right, I'll tell you one thing about this guy, he is going to go see his children for the first time since he was captured. He hadn't even seen his children, so if you ask him questions, don't make it long, because see, we're holding a dad up from hugging 2 children.
Earlier this morning, the 7 former POWs were greeted by a huge crowd of flag-waving family and friends. A C-17 transport plane brought them back to Fort Bliss, a week after their release from captivity in Iraq. Under the tail of the plane, the returning soldiers were met with open arms. Among them, Shoshana Johnson, gripping an American flag. She was shot in both ankles by Iraqi fighters. This was an emotional homecoming.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your outstanding support. This means the world to all of us. Remember our fallen soldiers. God bless America. This is why we live in a great country.
Held in captivity for 3 weeks, they were released when their Iraqi captors abandoned their posts. They were waiting families at Fort Hood too. They all last saw pictures of their loved ones as prisoners being paraded on Arab television. There's relief now they're finally back home.
It was the first food convoy to arrive from Jordan. 50 trucks chartered by the UN's World Food Programme. More are expected to follow. It was a welcome sight for Hind Al-Mahdi, though for her there are more urgent problems.
The most important thing is that we have to have the power on again, because after that we can more things will be facilitated.
Like water. Although some supplies have been restored, the power's needed for it to be adequately pumped. Crowds near the slums of Saddam City in Baghdad today jostled for supplies pumped from a tanker provided by the International Committee of the Red Cross. And Hind, an Iraqi water engineer working for the ICRC, faced the frustration of a crowd desperate for clean supplies. "We've no drinking water, no clean drinking water," pleaded this woman.
They need urgently someone to come to make a small repair for the pump, an extra pump they have in the compact unit.
Then, for Hind, it was on to hospital, this time a mental institution in the north of the city. Gunmen guard the place from looters, who've twice been through, stripping the place almost bare. As with other hospitals, the ICRC is installing emergency generators and pumps. Their own frustration about the lack of power intensified by the lack of any clear information.
Nobody knows what's happening there. Maybe there's a serious damage in the stations, in the power stations. Nobody knows. But we keep hearing promises that in a few days maybe the power will come back again. So we're hoping.
So the situation here is at least improving with these handouts and the assistance from the Red Cross. But things can only get back to normal when the power and the water start running. And as yet, there's still no sign of either. During the looting, the staff at the mental hospital fled, and the 1,500 patients were left to fend for themselves. By the time the staff returned, patients had either left or were wandering around the grounds, bewildered by the madness that had visited them, but quick to grasp the significance of events in the city.
He's run away. He was crazy.
Close to the mental hospital, we found what can best be described as one of the first signs of post-war reconstruction. It was an old army barracks, where 30 families have moved in and are turning the bombed-out buildings into their new homes. Mohammed's chosen residence is still surrounded by debris, though he's proud of the progress he's made. His 10-strong family will soon be moving in.
Now I won't have to pay rent. I'll stay in this house. I think that maybe life is starting to improve for me.
He's particularly pleased with his gate post, made from one barrel of an anti-aircraft gun, and he thanks Allah for his good fortune. Also praising their God, Baghdad's Christian community, at Easter Sunday services across the city. Iraq's Christian minority, around 5% of the population, enjoyed relative religious freedom under Saddam's secular rule. Deputy Prime Minister Tariq Aziz was a Christian. And there are fears that democracy might produce a new government with a more Islamic bent.
We are afraid of some extreme movement in the, I say it really, in the Islamic side. I hope there will be no. I think whatever the government will be, it will treat us good.
After his service, Samir showed me around his church and told me that while Saddam was a bad man, he did leave them alone.
If you kept clear of politics?
Yes, yes. Don't go to him, he'll not go to you.
But Saddam did make a gift to the church.
So this is Saddam's organ?
Yes.
No ordinary instrument, but a precision Italian-made pipe organ. As for Saddam's whereabouts, soldiers from the US Army, who've now taken over from the Marines in Baghdad, say they've been deluged with rumoured sightings, and acknowledge that peacekeeping is proving far harder than fighting.
Whereabouts of Saddam, I know where he is now. He's in like 20 different places. For example, I'm joking in a way, but some of them think they know exactly where he is, and they might be, and we're sending it up to our chain of command to let them know that now that we're in a metropolitan area, we don't know who's enemy, we don't know who's friendly. We can go ahead and assume people are friendly for the most part, but what I've told my men is treat everybody respectfully, but keep in mind, have an idea of how you're going to kill them if they try and hurt you.
And as for the power situation, the latest we're hearing from American sources is that the power station is now fine, but they think it's too dangerous to switch it on because of damaged connections across the city.
This was the burial place for 2 fallen British soldiers, unmarked graves on a patch of empty ground. Their remains now being examined to determine exactly how they died, in battle or by execution. A British base now lies within sight of the spot. This teenager told me he saw Bath Party cars and officials with bodyguards. They were burying 2 bodies, he claimed. But his account, like others here, was confused and unconvincing. As we filmed, sudden gunfire across the street. This area still tense, despite the nearness of the troops. The discovery here was made as a result of local intelligence. People from the area came forward to tell the army bodies had been buried on this spot. The investigation now underway is expected to last for weeks, not days. Until it's finished, British commanders here are saying little, except that their thoughts and prayers are with the families of the dead. Luke Alsop and Simon Cullingworth were bomb disposal experts who vanished in the early days of the war. This footage of Iraqis cheering and celebrating over their dead bodies was soon seen around the world. And the Prime Minister made a swift response, giving his own verdict at this news conference, shoulder to shoulder with George Bush.
Now the release of those pictures of executed British soldiers. If anyone needed any further evidence of the depravity of Saddam's regime, this atrocity provides it.
However these soldiers were killed, the padre of their home barracks in Essex is grateful they can soon make their final journey home.
Relief for the families, relief for the soldiers, and relief that actually we can go on now and have a burial as we all want to do. Sad though we are that actually these men have died.
The soldiers disappeared amid scenes like this during long, dangerous days of heavy fighting. So far, military sources here being cautious about what may emerge from the inquiry. Orla Gearan, BBC News, Azubair, outside Basra.
Hugh, the electricity and the water, the technical problems of Baghdad will pale into insignificance in a few days compared to the political problems that Jay Garner is stepping into here. If he arrives expecting most Iraqis to express gratitude for the freedom of expression, the liberation from the tyranny of Saddam Hussein that America has bestowed on them, then very quickly he'll have to think again, because he will find himself stepping into what is a very volatile situation.
America brought freedom of speech here on the back of an Abrams tank, and America is the first target of that freedom. The demonstrators are accusing American troops of arresting a prominent Shia cleric who has disappeared. They are demanding his immediate release. The Americans have to respect Iraq's independence, he says. The US put their foot in Iraq. They need to be careful, or this place will explode. This is the man who has to steer America through this turbulence. General Jay Garner came to Baghdad today. He has to find a way of handing power over to a new Iraqi administration. And he knows he doesn't have much time to do it, perhaps no more than 90 days.
I don't think I would put 90 days as a mark on the wall, but we will be here as long as it takes, but we'll leave fairly rapidly.
His immediate tasks are technical, to reconnect the water and electricity to a city that still, for the most part, has neither. The cameras were allowed to follow him touring an electricity plant. But power of the electrical sort is not his real problem. His real problem is that true power, political power, is quickly falling to Iraq's religious leaders. He has to persuade them that he's not a colonial governor and that he is not going to impose on them an American puppet regime.
What are we looking at?
For this country is still traumatized by the old tyranny. Today we found a cemetery on the edge of Baghdad. It holds the bodies of political prisoners executed for their opposition to Saddam Hussein. There's something like 1,000 graves in this plot alone, and each one is marked not with a name but a number. The gravediggers here say typically they would arrive in batches of 4 or 8 or 12, and that the military among them would have been executed by shooting, and the civilians, men and women alike, by hanging. They are digging up the remains of political prisoner Salah Hassan, who disappeared into Saddam's dungeons 3 years ago. His 3 brothers did not even know he was dead. But they've just learned that grave number 875 is his.
The war is over, Saddam is gone, but the pain he inflicted has not.
Government process, and with our assistance begin a reconstruction process and end up with a democracy that represents the freely elected will of the Iraqi people.
But as the self-styled coalition facilitator took a tour of a conveniently functioning power station, some of those Iraqi people were generating some energy of their own. This is a bona fide anti-American protest, one of the first non-orchestrated demonstrations here in a quarter of a century. And the message that's emerging is defiantly anti-imperialist. The leadership must be Iraqi, said this man. We don't need a US mandate, we're Iraqi Arabs. We're Muslims and we don't want to be ruled by an American. It's no good for us, added this man. We consider him a first-class servant of the Zionists. He'll definitely favor the Israelis over the Iraqi people. Closer to home, the discovery of the bodies of missing British soldiers Sapper Luke Alsop and Sergeant Simon Cullingworth in a shallow grave outside Basra has reignited the debate into their deaths. Graphic footage of the soldiers' bodies alongside their captured Land Rover, broadcast on Arab TV last month, failed to establish whether they died in combat or were cold-bloodedly executed. Now a military investigation can take place and help bring closure to one of the war's more troubled incidents.
So I think the forensic experts will obviously give their full reports, and that will help make the picture clearer. And 2 of the 4 men who managed to escape as well have a story to tell.
Meanwhile, the British military machine continues to wind down. The Royal Marines' 539th Assault Squad, amongst the first into action on the Al Faw Peninsula just over a month ago, started shipping out today. The next time many of these men set foot on land, it'll be British. John Gill.
It has changed these past few days and weeks.
That's absolutely true. 2 weeks ago, if they'd done this, they would have been shot on the spot, frankly. But this is, of course, more than a religious pilgrimage. It's a chance for the Shia majority in this country to express their political will.
They chanted prayers on the ruins of the dictator's statue. They detest his image. But today was also the celebration of a powerful emerging force. It is nationalist and Islamic. It wants an Iraq where foreigners have no role in running the country.
All the Iraqi people, all the regions in here in Iraq, like the USA outside the Iraq and the British Army outside the Iraq. We all of us hope we have an Islamic government, good government, to respect all the Iraqi people.
An Islamic government? That certainly isn't part of America's plan for Iraq. So in everything that's happened since Saddam fell, this is arguably the most significant. Many people here told us they want good relations with the West. But they are ready and willing to confront America if they don't get what they want.
Thank you, Mary. Well, that evidence centres on graves found in the town of Abu Ghraib, just west of here, the location of one of Iraq's most notorious jails. Local people there say that executions were carried out with alarming regularity. Hundreds, they say, took place even as US Marines advanced on the capital.
In the final days of the war.
5 people. 25.
This man thinks he's just found his brother's body.
What can I tell you? What can I tell you? It's our brother. We lastly found him. We don't know if there is our brothers, another brothers here. We don't know. You must be very angry. Angry, I don't know what to say.
But these few were killed because they were suspected of spying to help the coalition cause. In reality, it's not likely they were doing anything of the kind. They were killed in the inner compound of the Abu Ghraib prison, where it's thought thousands of others died before. Found inside the prison buildings, more faces of the disappeared. No one here knows who these men were, but no one expects to find them still alive. Abu Ghraib was notorious for its cruelty. When US Marines stormed in here, there were 1,800 prisoners inside. This is where many executions were carried out. The rope is worn through use. And while the hood for the condemned remains, the final death toll does not. But the relatives will go on searching, and they'll continue to turn the soil.